and new books in history for end of summer 2014. So this book I got for my birthday, actually. A friend got this to me, Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World by Jack Weatherford. This is a recent publication on Genghis Khan, and I'm actually about maybe a tenth of the way in, and it's great. Genghis Khan is, I think everyone knows about Genghis Khan, I think at least his name, and I think even people might even know that apparently something like, I don't want to say 10%, but maybe 5%, something like 5% of the Chinese population, or is it like northern China population, like the Mongolia area, but even into China, some crazy percentage of that population can actually be tied down or traced down to Genghis Khan. Because apparently he is obviously kind of a raider, and he would spread his seed everywhere, daily and multiple times. So, and those people go on and have kids. Eventually, there's going to be a lot of people who can trace themselves back to Genghis Khan. This book also says that Genghis Khan, as much as the Roman Empire is important for the West, Genghis Khan is important for the East. I think they say he conquered more territory than the Roman Empire did. He conquered more territory in the East than the Roman Empire did in the West, which is, I didn't know that. So that's amazing. So Genghis Khan is humongously influential. It talks about something about, I don't know if it was in India, but something about when the British came, his monument was sacred, a sacred place, and apparently the longest time they wouldn't bury him, and they kept a secret where they buried him or something, and something about that. And really interesting book on Genghis Khan, and I think this book, I don't know if this is some revisionism, so I have to be careful with very modern books because sometimes they really warp history. This book also mentions that, which I'm not sure if is really the case. It might be an overextension of really the facts, but I think most people think that Genghis Khan was a raider, and he just, with his, I can't remember what they used to call them. Essentially, they're horsemen, but they were kind of savage and just pillaged and destroyed villages. But Genghis Khan apparently he did wipe out the opposing army and all that, and there probably was some looting and all that, but apparently he also set up institutions and rebuilt cities, and so I'm not sure if that's true. I'm not, I don't know if Genghis Khan was standing there and he was telling people what to build and all that, or was he just raided the city and then left? But it seems like in the East, Genghis Khan is not seen as a raiding murderer. He's seen as a great imperialist, which is probably some people think that's strange, but his public view or perspective, even in modern times, he's not seen as a bad guy. So it may be true that Genghis Khan wasn't just a raider, that he actually was more, he was in the end, or the net effect being constructive. So it's a good book. It's well written so far. So, all right, here's it's not a classic, but I thought this might be really neat to look at. Metalsmiths. So this has lots of pictures in it, and it's a TimeLife, which I think was a TV series or something. TimeLife books, The Emergence of Man, and this is one of them, the Metalsmiths. And it's got all kinds of really nice photo paper in here on different ores and smelting stuff and filtering out stuff out of water and fashioning pots and all that. And one thing I thought was neat, it talks about here in early copper, or no, was it early bronze? And early copper, it mentions that and tin, of course. Bronze is tin and copper. And it mentions, there's copper at the top, but I want you to see this stuff at the bottom here. It mentions that first, the bottom left over there, that's cassiterite or something like that. That was the first tin that was found and worked. But unfortunately, it was tin and, what was it again? Tin and arsenic. Tin and arsenic, which is poisonous. So eventually they figured that out, that their blacksmiths were dying, and their miners were dying from arsenic poisoning. But it's just neat how they find these rocks and they can melt them down. And then even it mentioned, I can't remember who it was, but they experimented with how much tin and how much copper you add together to make a really strong bronze. So, and I can't remember where I read this, but I thought it was right on. It said that for the longest time, man worked with stone, just stone. You had stone clubs or stone like axes and stone everything. You used a stone, like even a hand axe was just a stone that that had like a bit of a rock blade on it that you could use to chip stuff and also use to hack animals and all that. So just rock, just stone. But when they found metal and they could melt it down a bit and heat it up, it was a new kind of stone, wasn't it? A new kind of stone. And the first stones they found were pretty stones, and they didn't use them for weapons because it was so sparse. You wouldn't do that. It was so little. You can make a knife out of this little piece of gold or whatever, even though gold is pretty soft. Same with copper. Copper on its own is too soft to use. You use it once and it's bent and just useless. But eventually they found that this stuff is different than a white rock, white boring rock. You can actually do stuff with this metal. So I just think that was really neat about the transition of everything's stone, and then we found this other stone, but this other stone you can melt down and you can do stuff with. So kind of it's just a different stone, but with different uses. So I just thought that was kind of a neat transition, a neat way of thinking about that transition. Okay, I'll try to put these in order. I guess this one's next. So these books I got from Better World, except for the very first one, the Better World book sale. Atlantic Kingdom by Butler, America's Contest with Cunard in the Age of Sail and Steam. I was reading a bit of this actually, and it was really neat. Yeah, the book is essentially about how early American companies competed with a British shipping lane company called Cunard, which monopolized shipping in the North American era. And there's some really neat stories in here about, like it even talks about how long it would take to go back and forth and the cost. And there's an old advertisement here, which I'll show you, which is kind of neat. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it very well. But it lists all the ships that the boat has, and it lists the places where they go. I'll read off some of them, but so it mentions that the Boston Packets is a company. Liverpool to Boston, that was the trip that you could take. And I'll just read some of the stuff here. Sailing every week from Liverpool. And then it mentions some different boats they have and the cost. I think it says £100. Very small print. And I just thought, like those old advertisements, emigration, United States and British provinces of North America. So that's Canada, of course, right? So this is really neat if you were alive at the time and you want to get up and move. Like, can you imagine right now, like you probably live in the States and then less likely Canada or Britain, but I think my main audience is those three places. Imagine all of a sudden there's a new island discovered off, let's say the east coast of, let's say the west coast of Chile. There's a new island found. The U.S. claimed it, let's say. And now you all of a sudden see all these immigration papers. Do you want to float? Do you want to get on a boat for a week and go to this new island and settle and build your own house with wood? And like, this is, unless you're an Irishman and you're starving, which happened. And a lot of people, I think something like a third of the Irish population moved over to the U.S. and Canada because of the Irish potato famine. But Can you imagine just you like talking to your wife or your kids or your parents, I guess, and saying, do you want to emigrate to some other place, some other world with not exactly the same delicacies of our a very well-established life in Britain? Do you want to go across to America, this new place? Do you want to go to a British province or the United States? just wow, it's just amazing. Of course, that'll never happen again for us, for our generation. The world's been explored. But, what about an emigration paper for Mars? Emigration, Mars, and other colonies. And then it lists all these things, and shipping, what would you say, flying to Mars? Every week from London, England, or New York, Florida, I guess, is the launch site. So Florida, it would be in Florida, every week launching from Florida, and you'd be at Mars in a year, or I don't know, it's probably be shorter than that when we get there, but it'll be shorter a time period to get there, but when we start actually colonizing Mars. But can you imagine, like when they start doing colonies there, and they're probably just going to ship scientists at first, but eventually they'll want to ship people who can do all kinds of other things, right? So eventually they're going to be immigration papers from Mars. So I guess the frontier is not yet ended for us. The frontier used to be just out past the country, out past that lake. We have no idea what's out there. And then it used to be out to sea. We have no idea what's out there. And then it used to be then out past the ocean. We don't know what's out there. And now we know the whole globe. And now it'll be the next planet. We don't know what's out on Mars. Will it eventually be the next solar system? We don't know what we want to go to Alpha Centauri now. We know what the whole solar system is. We've colonized everything, or everything that's worth colonizing. And the next frontier will be the next solar system, which will be Alpha Centauri, I think it's called. And then another galaxy, maybe. But apparently, from physics, we're limited to our solar system. But space will be the final frontier, though, as Star Trek says. All right, speaking of frontiers, maybe this was just in my mind, but here's a book on America, the first frontier, establishing colonies, and there's all kinds of natives on here. The whole cover is on natives, so I guess a heavy part of this book will be on dealing with the natives. And notice the font actually fairly large, so this won't be very long to get through, even though it's a fairly thick book. But there's all kinds of pictures in here, which I will show you one. I guess here's some Incas. Actually, I don't know what they are. Pueblo. There's some natives. So it says here, what is this? Dog, travois, and tumult. I don't know what that is. Anyways, I think I talked enough about frontier, so that's that frontier, history of that frontier. I don't think we'll be running into other civilizations, maybe in other solar systems, not this solar system. And here's the last one in history, Dangerous Games by Margaret Macmillan. The uses and abuses of history. So this is a little bit on a little bit of a pushback of revisionism. Actually, the book flap, I think it's called, is actually pretty good. So I'm just going to read a bit part of it here. So he says, or the author says, the book reveals how a deeper engagement with history in our private lives, and more important, in the sphere of public debate, can guide us to a richer, more enlightened existence as individuals and nations. And then it says, history is used to justify religious movements and political campaigns alike. The manipulation of history is increasingly pervasive in today's world. Dictators may suppress history because it undermines their ideas, agendas, or claims to absolute authority. Nationalists may tell false, one-sided, or misleading stories about the past. Political leaders might mobilize their people by telling lies. and it talks about Hitler and the Jews. So Hitler used the Jews as a scapegoat, right, to kind of to block Germany's humiliating defeat in World War One, right? Austria-Hungary. So that was important to get into World War II, because the Germans were already, the Versailles Treaty already really ripped on, or not the Versailles Treaty, but they really ripped on, they really put the Germans in poverty after World War I because of the war reparations. And something like, they sent German shoes, boxes and boxes and boxes of German shoes to Britain as war reparations. And it hurt the British shoemaker industry. It was a stupid thing to do, but anyways, it really hurt the Germans. And so when Hitler, it was a bit before Hitler, but also when Hitler came into power, he had to really get the country going again, because it was World War I just really really burned the German soul and economics, the economy. So, anyways, even so, the Soviets, of course, are known for their propaganda, but you have to get the citizens mad and pissed off about something. You have to say that, oh, look, it wasn't our defeat in World War I. It wasn't the German leaders of World War I that led to our defeat. It was the evil Jews and their money grubbing or something, right? So so now you point the masses to some other enemy, not me. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't the political class's fault that we lost World War I. It was these people's fault. So let's get them. And so that gets people all up in an uproar, and it turns them into a mob, and then you can control them. Always can control mobs if you just control their emotions. So that's what they do. And I find a bit of that happening today with historical revisionism. There's a lot of nihilism today. And so a way of really getting people infected with it is through college and university. And people who take literature courses and history courses, they get infected with this nihilist view of the world, this revisionist view, and how history is just full of sexism and racism, and that's it. So why don't study it and let's just fix it? And that's it. That's the mentality today. Don't study history. Don't study what's called white dead males. Like, that's really intellectual and academic to say such a thing. Don't study those people because they're all racist and sexist and all this other crap. So let's just ignore that. Let's study modern texts written by idiots, written by people who don't study great ideas. They just invented it out of their hat. They think that they're ancient Greece. They think that they can just write from today's myopic perspective and create a better world. These are the most uneducated people that we've ever seen. So I think forever, as long as human civilization exists, it must learn from the past. And in the past, you only could learn from your parents and your elders because nothing was written down. It was only oral, and people forgot. So history was limited. Only so much could be remembered, and then it was forgotten. But the beginning of books and the beginning of keeping data stored, not in human minds, but in physical objects, whether it's tablets or whether it's books, and etc. Now we have all the knowledge we can of history. We'll still, of course, finding old documents and doing archaeology and things like that and finding out new information, but the stuff we know is written down and people can study it. We don't have to depend on just our parents. So now we can learn. You can learn from Aristotle. You don't have to be born during his time period. And so for the longest time, for as long as human civilization exists, the only way to make progress is to study and master the ideas of the past, find the best ideas from them, and spread them today, spread them in the next generation. This will not occur if you forget the past and invent as you go and try to create a future that way. That will lead us back into some kind of dark age. You have to be able to study the ancient books and the great works. Yes, they're difficult, but anything in life that's worthwhile is difficult. Necessarily, it takes effort. And so, for the few of us, and I assume people watching this video, for someone to actually search out a video like this, you must be one of these people. And of course, the videos are longer than 5 minutes, so that cuts out most of the YouTube audience. You feel a need to be more educated and to feel a need to be connected with other people who also aspire to be. And these things are important, and these things, they're bothersome. It's annoying, and it's a need that you must fill. And luckily for us, we don't have to depend on our elders. We can depend on people even older and wiser. So, anyways, that's new books for history. Next, I will do literature.